Put us in the presentation mode. And away we go.
Away we go.
All right. So welcome to another Wednesday grab and go growth tactics session. I appreciate you taking some time out of your day to join us. My name is Jim Wilcox. I am the owner, purveyor of the Sandler Performance Center here in Fort Wayne and South Bend, Indiana. Great to have you here. I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Mr. John Vanderslice. John, where are you located?
I am in beautiful southern New Jersey, I guess where I am right now, I'm about 15 miles from Philadelphia, southern part of the state. And like you, Jim, I have a Sandler Center here in beautiful South Jersey. Yeah. And it's
Very
a beautiful
nice.
day
And
out, as you can probably see out the window. Yeah.
I can see that. Not so beautiful here. It's raining and cold, but I do find beauty in fall weather. So we normally would be joined by Mr. Tim Barry. Tim is traveling to Minnesota in a socially distanced manner. However, he does not have internet up there and is not able to join us. So he sends his regards. So yeah, welcome. Today, we want to share a little bit about what we've learned on sales best practices since COVID has arrived. And as always, want you guys to kind of warm up your chat fingers a little bit. Always like to start with a question to get you guys involved here. What have you noticed as a sales best practice since the onset of COVID-19? I know a lot has changed. I read an article this morning, John, that talked about whether COVID-19 has really pushed training to be virtual or whether that was coming anyway and selling, not only training, but training and selling to happen virtual or whether that was coming anyway. I tend to think that virtual selling was on its way. For those that weren't already doing it, I had a lot of clients that were saying to me, hey, Jim, how can we maximize technology to get our people to sell better and differently versus having huge budgets for having sales teams that are on the road, you know, that traditional road warrior type of setup. So I believe that was coming. What are your thoughts there in terms of whether this was coming or not?
You know, I'll chime in with that. I mean, I think I have mixed feelings, right? Because I do think we have to leverage technology, but I've seen over my career now the idea about relationships, whether or not relationships matter, kind of ebb and flow over time. And relationships don't really matter. And then it swings back to that. Relationships do matter, and I do think relationships matter, and I think we're social animals. I like what Michael said. He said, I think it helped us manage the game clock better. I don't think, and I hope we don't get away from face-to-face selling, but I do think, when you talk about, road warriors and, traveling distances, I think it makes us more efficient. But I don't think, I think really, and I'd be curious, and I want to maybe set the tone for this conversation. Sometimes it's addition by subtraction. I mean, I think COVID in some ways has pulled the curtain back on certain areas of weaknesses and also opportunities. Maybe we didn't realize that were there. So I don't know that it pushed us or it was coming anyway. I do think it made us move in that direction, but I don't think it was around the corner in the manner that it is right now.
Yeah. I think COVID, from my perspective, has forced, it's definitely pulled the curtain back on, who is excelling at creating relationships and maybe who is faking it a little bit. There's no doubt about that. I think it's also gotten us very comfortable with this form of communication, right? Whether it's two of us to many or whether we're selling in this capacity, we certainly can be effective and efficient in a virtual type of manner. Is it preferred? I don't think so. To your point, I think we are very social animals in that respect. So I think we will find a happy medium, maybe tilted a little bit towards being face to face, I happen to believe that that's where and how relationships are built. So I think, when COVID first started, we noticed a couple things. And I don't know if you saw this with your client, and I'll ask those that are online, if you saw these type of things pop up with your sales teams or with yourself, right? Back in April, May, we had a lot of fear, worry, doubt, panic. We saw a lot of people begin to stall out because there was uncertainty, and maybe had trash kicked in. And so there was a lot of people that were filling their days with activities that weren't necessarily maybe the sales activities that they could have been doing or should have been doing because there was fear of the unknown. Did you notice this type of thing, John, with your clients or with clients that you were maybe prospecting?
I think honestly more that I was prospecting, and I thought about it in this way, and I thought it was an interesting sort of metaphor in a way. I was watching a thing. There's a guy if anybody, I don't think we have anybody from Columbus, Ohio, but you might know the name Jungle Jack Hanna, who runs the Columbus Zoo. And he and his family were in, I think, Yellowstone National Park, going along on a leisurely stroll on a trail. And all of a sudden a bear popped out on the trail in front of a big bear. So what do you think when you get frightened like that, or you're faced with something unexpected, what do you think they did? They froze.
I think their instinct tells them to run.
Well, no, they froze. They froze.
Okay.
They didn't move. A lot of times, I think when we are faced with something unexpected, I think a lot of times, I think sure we run. We don't automatically say, all right, I'm going to stand here and fight. That's not usually the first instinct. We might arrive at that, but
not with a bear.
Right. I think we have a tendency to freeze. We're like, and we try to assess the situation. So I saw a fair amount of what I said, kind of freezing. People were not sure what to do. And I think we'll get into that in this discussion about, the people that and the companies and individuals that actually have done well in this time. What are some of the things that they did? But I think I saw more the tendency to freeze for people that did not have plans and they didn't have processes in place. I saw a lot of freezing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's really what this word cloud kind of indicates, right? I have all these emotions that happen, and I tend to freeze, like you said. I'm not sure what to do, so doing nothing sometimes is the easiest route. And I witnessed that not so much with our clients, because we really pushed our clients, right? My mantra was, now's the time to double down, right? But we're 8 months into this. So the point of this topic today is to really talk about what have we learned and what can you guys put into use today. So John, as I was putting this together, I know I shared with you this quote from Brian Tracy. I happen to like this because of the simplicity of it, right? Successful people are simply those people with successful habits. And I think one of the things that COVID has exposed in April, May, and into June is what are the habits of the people that are around us that are, or our teams. So if you're looking at this from a management perspective, what are the habits of the people that we're leading? And if you're an individual producer, what were my habits pre-COVID? Because now that we have this adversity in front of us, it gets exposed pretty quickly. I think the number one thing that we learned, and we talked about this, John, is that the most successful reps visualize the goal. Talk a little bit about this from your perspective.
Yeah, and there's some subtlety in the words here, and in that last slide, in that phrase by Brian Tracy, remember the word that he said in that quote, which was simply, because I want that to resonate with you as we get a little bit further along. Successful people are simply. Just remember that word simply as we go on. So go to the next slide again. I think, I think, people that we saw that did well, they had goals, they had plans. Now, here's the thing. Obviously, we were thrown a major curveball with hopefully this is a once in a lifetime pandemic, right? But they visualized that goal and they got to work because maybe the way we were going to arrive at the goal, right, was now going to have to be different. We were going to have to pivot. We were going to have to adapt. So they adapted and they doubled down on figuring it out. I mean, we went to the shore for the first time about 3 weeks ago. It was nice weather, and we were driving down what's called the Atlantic City Expressway, and it was closed. I mean, there was probably something going on. They closed it. So our goal didn't change to go to the shore. We just simply had to find another route. If you think about that, right? So I think the people that did well, they held that goal in place and they visualized it and they said, okay, what am I going to do? And they moved forward. They didn't just hammer away. They actually went to work, but they figured that they had to adapt and pivot. That's really what I saw most often.
Exactly. And I think that, I remember having conversations, 7-8 months ago about the goal, and does the goal change? For many, the goal doesn't change. It's the route of how we get there. For others, they may have adjusted the goal depending on what they were looking at. But to your point, when you started talking about this, it was simple, right? I simply visualized the goal and that's what I'm going after. There's no pause in the action. There was no stop start. I don't worry about getting it right. I just have got to get there, right? Wherever there is. And so that's probably the first thing that we notice with the most successful reps, right? They visualized the goal, didn't waste any time, got to work, and they doubled down on getting there, which leads us to the next one, right? They developed a plan that they could execute on. I don't have to overcomplicate it. I simply have got to put together a plan that I can execute on a daily basis. And I know that for our clients, and even in my business, right, when I talk to the associates that are in my business and talking to the clients, I said, look, we need to pick one or the other. We're going to double down on our behaviors, or we're going to triple down on our behaviors. I don't care which one we do. We're going to pick one of those. And we're not going to wonder about it, right? Me picking up the phone, I'm going to talk to people, right? I'm going to lead with empathy in March and April. Hey, look, I get it. This is hard. Let's have a conversation. The key is getting out there and having conversations, not overthinking it, simply getting to a plan and executing on it. Your thoughts from that perspective, John?
Yeah, I agree with you, Jim. And I think it's a matter of almost, the left and the right, the two extremes. I think, early in the pandemic, a guy that I see a lot on social media, local here, and he put this post, he said, just do more, do more.
Yeah.
And I thought about that and it bothered me. And I'll tell you why it bothered me. Because if I just said, or we say to people, hey, just go out and do more, double down, triple down, more of what? We can do more of the wrong thing, right? So I think it's a balance between overthinking it, right, and getting that, getting ready to get ready syndrome. Let me get it just right. Let me get the perfect action plan, right? I think that we have to get out. We can't play defense. We have to get out, but we have to do the right things, and that's where the planning comes in. If we needed to adapt, if we needed to adjust, we had to be able to get to work and do that, and then do the right behaviors. Because there are times, right, like right now, if you had a playbook that was, you were great at networking and, client lunches and all those things, well, that went out the window. So obviously you couldn't try to force that. You had to, adjust your plan. So I think it's a matter of don't vacillate and stay stuck, but don't just go out and hammer. We've got to, that's obviously the word plan, figure out what's the plan we can actually execute to get there.
Right. Yeah, there's no winging it. It's we're going to do these steps and we're going to do them over and over again until we achieve success. And if I have to adjust it along the way and make small changes, I will. But I would say that this is the, second thing that we noticed in terms of successful reps. And as I think about this, John, the successful companies around us too exhibited these exact same things. We know what the goal is. We're moving towards it. Very quickly get to a plan. Now we're executing on it, and not waiting, right? Not waiting, always looking forward, not looking in the rearview mirror. I still run into individuals and organizations that want everything to go back to the way it was, right? And they're looking back in their rearview mirror on, how it was, when can we get back to that? And unfortunately, I'm not sure that we're ever going to get back to that. So why, for me, right, why would I want to waste time there? I've got to figure out what it looks like moving forward. You added this graphic in. Share a little bit why you added this graphic in.
Well, I changed it a little bit, but I said moving forward because I think Michael said it in his, Michael Norton, owner and founder and president of Tremazing, a great organization, prior president of the Ziegler organization, Sandler executive vice president, launched many startups, been around. And he said very simply, you have to play offense. And I think that's right. I think, we can't, there's time to play defense. This was not the time. The people that got stuck and stayed still really kind of lost momentum, lost opportunity. And, you've got to keep moving forward. You've got to take a step. There's a great book, I think we've mentioned it before, Atomic Habits. And they talk about just taking small steps and building on those. You take a step forward, you get a result, you learn something, you adjust, you take another step forward. And, we can't wait, because there's people that certainly have suffered greatly during this pandemic. It's a terrible thing. But there are people that also have done very, very well, because they've said, okay, I see opportunity, but they've not done it by sitting and waiting for it to come to them. They've made adjustments. Right. Several of our clients have made adjustments in their businesses and are really flourishing. And it's that idea of moving forward and building some momentum, not sitting still, and certainly not, playing defense.
Michael Topa put a comment in earlier, looking for new revenue channels, right? So COVID kind of pushed them to look at new revenue channels in their business. I think there's a couple things that I've witnessed with individuals and organizations. From an individual perspective, those people that are successful are looking at, how do I sell differently? This is out of my comfort zone. I know it. I don't necessarily like it, but how can I sell differently in what I'm doing? And some people have gone to hitting the ground when they can hit it, where they can hit it. Others have said, look, I'm going to pick up the phone. I never had to make cold calls before. Now I'm going to start making them. Others have said, I don't know a thing about technology, but I'm going to figure out this Zoom or Teams or whatever technology they happen to be using. They're looking forward. The companies that have done that, and there's a lot of great stories in our areas, all of our areas, of companies that have said, look, this is not my business, but this is what I need to do to survive. And some companies have had wild success pivoting to do things like, hey, we're going to get into the personal protective equipment business. Others are making support items that are related to what they do, but not at all their primary business. And I can think of one company locally who, if they had only focused on their primary business, they'd probably be decimated. But they pivoted, went down a whole nother avenue. That when this all gets sorted out, they'll actually come out with two businesses, right? Their primary business and the place that they pivoted to. And if you talk to the owner, he would tell you, I didn't have a choice, right? I could stay stuck and be out of business, or I could look forward and ask myself what's possible here, right? And I went with the very first thing that was possible. And I think that speaks to, you identify it, you set your target, you execute on your plan, right? And you keep pushing forward.
Well, here's a question. I think it's kind of a rhetorical question, but if you think about it, and what we really saw clearly, people that did not have a plan or didn't have process in place. There's a saying in business, right, that profitability can hide a lot of sins. And I think in good times, we can ride the wave and we can get away with a lot. And then, as I said, this pandemic has pulled back the curtain. Now, if you think about it, how do you think you would fare if you were riding the wave, right, and you didn't have a plan? and now all of a sudden this hits and gets knocked sideways. How do you like
Mm-hmm.
your chances compared to, at least if you had a plan? Maybe it's not even the right plan for the time. Like you said, people made major adjustments. Those people that had planned, that were used to process and were disciplined, could do things like Michael mentioned in his quote. They go into the 2-minute offense the whole game, but they don't just think up that 2-minute offense on the spur of the moment. They had plans in place. There's a great phrase, I think it's around Mike Tyson, I'm not sure. It says, everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face.
Right.
Now you're forced to do something different, right? And I think
Mm-hmm.
it goes to show us that we need to have process. And I think sales is a profession where we can get a little bit lazy, meaning we think just because we're good looking and we smile a lot sometimes that, that's all that we need. And we know, our friend John Rosso says sales is a slight edge game. The difference between winning a deal and losing a deal sometimes is very small. So I
Mm-hmm.
think, having a plan and being able to have a plan you can execute against was a huge, and continue to be a huge difference maker. Do you agree?
I agree 100%. Yeah, 100%. I think that, so there's a gentleman visiting our office today, and he's got a notebook, and on the front of that notebook, it says, "Success loves discipline," right? And I think that quote correlates with this, right? Successful people are simply those with successful habits. In other words, successful people are disciplined,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think it's that discipline. So it's the discipline of moving forward, right? Going back to the Mike Tyson quote, I have a plan until I get punched in the face, but am I disciplined enough to keep going forward? I think that's the key difference between successful people and those that get stuck. We all get punched in the face at some point, right? The difference between the two is, am I disciplined enough to keep moving forward? And I think that go ahead.
I was going to say, it'll be an interesting topic for another time. Just like we say, does behavior drive attitude or attitude drive behavior? We know behavior drives attitude. The same thing with discipline. Does the chicken or the egg? Is it we're disciplined, therefore we have process, or is it in putting process in our life that allows us to be disciplined? Whole nother subject, but it's an interesting one that we'll have to talk about at another time. Because I think sometimes people are afraid and they say, "Oh gosh, I'm just not that disciplined," like Jim, for example, right? And sometimes it's not necessarily a natural trait. We put process in so we can be disciplined.
Yep. Right. So great rhetorical question for everybody to think about. We'll definitely make that a topic coming up. I think from what can we take away from this, right? Because this is a tactical webinar. It's all about going back to the basics, right? How could we get through another, repeat of this COVID? And John, in our conversation, it all comes down to focusing on the fundamentals, right? If there's great stories out there about Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant and the way that they practice, right? They weren't practicing, the game-winning shot under pressure. They would practice free throws for hours and hours and hours on end, or a 15-foot jump shot, right? For hours and hours and hours on end. Those are the fundamentals. So for us, from a sales perspective, from a sales leadership perspective, the fundamentals for us are have a cookbook or a playbook, right? Have that recipe for success. What do those daily behaviors look like, right? Do I need to pick up the phone? Do I need to network with people? Do I need to, and what's the frequency behind that? Certainly, if you're not familiar with that on this call, reach out to us. We're happy to help you. Several people on here are very familiar with Sandler, may even be clients of ours. Our cookbook should be looked at regularly. Care, John, do you want to take care?
Sure. Again, I just think as an overarching statement on this, focusing on the fundamentals. I know you and I have had this conversation. I've had this conversation with Michael, Norton. I think sometimes we have a tendency to overcomplicate things. I think sometimes when we're under pressure, we somehow think that the answer has to be hard. And sometimes the answer is easy. and we have to focus on fundamentals. For those that are golfers on this call, I watched a guy in the before the COVID really got bad and we lockdown. I went out to play, and this guy was putting a 2-foot putt, practicing it. I came back from hitting balls about an hour later, and he was still there putting this putt. And he's a very, very good golfer. He's won the club championship a couple of times. And I said, "Why are you practicing this putt? You've been at this for over an hour." He said, "This is the difference between me winning and winning everything." Simple as a fundamental.
Wow.
So here, having a more granular approach to our clients, who do we want to keep? Who do we want to attract, recapture? Where do we want to expand relationships? Very fundamental, but very, very powerful. And one thing that you should absolutely be focused on.
100%. And it's something that we should be focused on a quarterly basis, right? So we're practicing it over and over and over again, right? Resetting that care strategy, working the behaviors on a daily basis. And then referrals have been huge through COVID, right? Networking, figuring out who you can be introduced to, right? Who has the need for the conversations that we can put in front of them, the products, the solutions, et cetera. Those that have leveraged their referral network have witnessed or experienced success out there. Just can't be said enough. And we all know, it should go without saying, but everybody's surprised by it, or many are surprised by it. The best time to ask for a referral is now, right? Not waiting until we've serviced, not waiting until it's complete. The best time is now. People like us the most now. We should be out there working that on a regular basis. So, John, any final words on this? I think that
I agree. I think it's again. I think it's a fundamental. I think it's about figuring out, playing offense, moving forward, and don't worry that it doesn't have to be perfect, right? It doesn't have to be perfect. There's a thing we say in Sandler: the worst you ever do will be the best they ever see. So don't worry that it has to be perfect, but you want to get out there and execute and focus on the fundamentals.
I like that you brought that up, John, because I think that has been a stumbling block for many that I've talked to. I've got to get this right, or I've got to get this perfect. And that's caused people to make a no start or a false start in moving towards that goal. I think that we've just got to set it, whether it's the goal or the plan. We just got to set it and start moving towards it. We can adjust on the way. So appreciate you guys taking time out of your day. Certainly, if we can be a resource to you, we're here to serve. Reach out to us. Our emails are on this slide. Again, I'm in Indiana. John's in New Jersey. Tim, I guess he lucked out on this one. I'm not even sure where Tim's from. Do you know, John?
Somewhere
in Texas. Somewhere in Texas.
I don't know. And by the way, listen, Jim and I and Tim all work very closely together. If any of us can help you, don't hesitate to reach out.
Absolutely.
Our job is to help you the best that we can, and we do this purely to give back. So don't hesitate to reach out to any of us. We're happy to help in any way we can.
Absolutely. Appreciate everybody being here. We'll talk to you guys next week on our next Wednesday Grab and Go Growth Tactics webinar. Have a great day. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. John, happy Thanksgiving to you, my friend.
Well, thank you, bud. We'll hang on for a minute in case there's any questions. Let's see. Enjoy the holiday. Good. Key takeaway by Mac. Focus on the fundamentals. Good job. Excellent.
There we go. Thanks, Mac.
Yep.
All right.
Good. All right,
Mike. Well, all right. Very good.
And a happy Thanksgiving. Good job. Well done, my friend. We'll talk soon.
You too. All right. We'll talk to you a little later on. Thanks, John.
Bye, Jimmy.
All right. Bye-bye.